Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Reza.
Firstly, can we check on a few players who've got injuries or potentially have injuries? Alexander Isak, he's not in the Sweden squad. Is there any chance he goes to Everton with you?
No, unfortunately not. No, he won't make the game. We hope he'll be back with Callum for the game after the international break. That's the plan at the moment. So fingers crossed both players continue to do well.
And what about Nick Pope, who is in the England squad but was missing the other night?
Yeah, should be okay.
Kieran Trippier, is he okay and available for you this weekend?
Yeah, we hope so, yeah.
Okay. And there's a few. Fabian Schär as well, I think you mentioned, took a couple of knocks against Wimbledon. Is he all right?
Should be okay.
Good. I'll leave it there with injuries. The performance and the draw against Manchester City, then progress in the Cup. If you can get a positive result at Everton, it would make what's been a good week even better, wouldn't it? And that's the way you'll want to sign off before the internationals.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the aim from our perspective. I think it's been a good week. The Manchester City performance, I think, gave us real heart and showed again, I think, what we are capable of as a group when we all play at our best. The Wimbledon game was obviously going to be difficult, and it was a different kind of game, but still effective result, and we're through. So yeah, everything rests now on this game for us.
What type of performance, what sort of qualities will you need to show in an away game, but also against Everton the way they play?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you go there, it's a difficult game. I think the ground, of course, the last time I think we visit there, it's sort of got that feel that the fans are involved in the game right from the off. They're very close to the pitch. So I think how you start the game, how you impose yourselves on the opposition there is hugely important. So we want to be really positive in our approach. We've got to learn lessons from the Fulham game in our last away performance. We did for the Manchester City game, but it's still relevant in my mind that we need to make sure we're the Manchester City team, and we learn our lessons from that game.
And lastly, Anthony Gordon's been back there with you a couple of times now. Do you feel that the whole thing of him returning to Everton has maybe died down a bit and is perhaps not as tense as it would have been the first time he returned to Goodison Park?
Yeah, I hope so. And I think having been back there twice, I think this will be his third time. I think with each time, I think it will get slightly easier for Anthony. But still, he'll be emotional. He's human. I think there'll be lots of things going through him as he plays the game. But I think as long as he focuses on himself and I thought he was excellent last week in leading the line for us. I thought he was really good on and off the ball. A really important performance because you need your focal point in attack to deliver certain aspects that help the team. So all I ask is he does that again.
Okay. Eddie, just one on Callum and Alex. You're obviously missing both of them tomorrow, but how much are you looking forward to having them back at your disposal, and how much are Newcastle a different animal when they've got them both? Because it almost feels like they feed off each other a little bit, or certainly they have in the past when they've both been fit and available.
Yeah, I don't think they've been fit together for a sustained period for a long time. And I think that's had a negative effect on us as a team, of course, because they're two outstanding players. But also, I think for themselves, they almost need each other, I think, to help propel them to their best performances, because there's nothing like that pressure of someone else either competing for your shirt or in some senses playing with you, because I think when they've played together they've done really well together, albeit we haven't seen it as much as we would have liked. So two hugely influential players as well off the pitch. You know, Callum, we've spoken about many times, his energy, his positivity. Alex is a totally different character, but he has an aura about him, and he's someone that I think we're a much better team when we have both players around us. So I'm very keen to get them both back.
And is that one of the reasons why you've kept Callum Wilson? We've seen it with Kieran Trippier as well. When there's been interest in them from other clubs, you've made it clear you've wanted to keep them here. Is that because, as well as what they do on the pitch, they offer a lot behind the scenes as well if they are injured or missing for whatever reason?
Well, you have players, I think, that add to the dressing room, add to the spirit of the group. Callum's definitely one of those people that he's always laughing, but not laughing in a negative way, laughing in a really positive way. He produces energy whenever he's in the room. You notice him, and you can't have enough people like that galvanise the group. But also, he's a serious guy. He wants to win, and he wants to achieve. And I know he's really serious about trying to help propel Newcastle to win trophies, and that drives Callum. So for all those qualities, and of course his playing ability, when he's fit, he's an incredible player. So we're determined to try and get him back fit and keep him fit for as long as possible.
Thanks. Andy?
Morning, Eddie. Straight in, lots of talk about the stadium at the minute. To move or to renovate, where do you stand now? I know I've asked you this question before. Have you changed your opinion, or where do you stand right now?
Well, I think it's a difficult one for someone like myself, who people will want to know my opinion, but I'm not based with all the facts. I'm not sort of hearing the pros and cons behind all the decisions. I think my natural instinct was always to stay at St James's Park. It's an incredible place to play football. It's our home. So to sort of think about moving somewhere else feels a little bit of a betrayal to somewhere that's served us so well. But we are well aware that as a football club we need to increase our revenue. So people with more brain cells will make the decision for the benefit of the long-term future of the football club, and that's always the most important thing. So I could be swayed, but just my natural instinct is to want to stay.
I won't ask you about that for another year or so anyway, at the very least. I'm going to dredge up a quote of yours from a year and a half ago or so. Sometimes you have to remember what it's like to lose. It motivates you. Came after the loss to Sheffield Wednesday in the FA Cup. You went on to qualify, obviously, for the Champions League after that. Do you think that Fulham loss that you've referenced will have a similar sort of effect on Newcastle this season or not?
I certainly hope so. I think there's nothing worse than that feeling when you lose and when you haven't performed, and you know the sort of loss was self-inflicted to a degree. Of course, I thought Fulham played well, but we had to look at ourselves. I think sometimes when you have moments like that in games like that, it does force you to change and rethink and reset. And I always think those things can sometimes be really powerful and for the benefit. But I don't want to feel that again for a long, long time.
There was a clip of Dan Burn against Manchester City pressing the entire City defence, it seemed. It went a little bit viral. I think someone even put the Titanic music behind it as well. Does that kind of sum up the work rate, the commitment that is going to continue turning Newcastle United's performances around? Because I imagine you have, seen the clip of Dan pressing.
Well, I saw it live, and I was thinking, what's Dan doing up there? But I think he's followed someone in and then just continued. And I'd always stand and applaud that attitude, because that's what we need. We need that. It's almost a metaphor, really, for how we want the team to play. It's standing and stepping forward, and we're aggressive, and we're coming to try and take the game. And so if that is an analogy that helps anybody, then that's what we want the team to look like.
We spoke to Dan yesterday, and he said he watched the Aston Villa game in the Champions League the other night against Bayern Munich, and it was almost like a kick to him personally that, he wants to get back there, the club want to get back there. I know you're a manager that likes to look for motivational techniques. Is the kind of the atmosphere, the scenes at Villa Park the other night, the perfect motivational technique for the aim this season?
Yeah, I mean, whatever floats your psychology. For me, that wouldn't have touched me necessarily in the same way maybe it would touch someone else. I think for me, I always try and look at us and try and find ways to take the group forward and set new goals and to focus on where we are now and where we want to be in the future. Look, credit to Aston Villa for what they did last year, and credit to them for how they're attacking the Champions League. It is a very difficult thing to do with the amount of games that you have, but we're on our own journey, and that experience we had last year was incredible. We desperately want that again. But sometimes the pain of missing out on something, again, going back to your point earlier, does drive you forward in different ways. So we're having to use that motivation to help us this year.
Thanks, Andy. Nisha?
Morning, Eddie. You talked there about Dan Burn pressing. I guess the whole press from the team was really impressive against Man City. And I guess you want to build on that with your next Premier League game, but it is harder away from home when you haven't got that crowd. So how do you adapt to the challenge?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is harder because the energy that the crowd give us, the feeling sometimes you're sort of a player will be questioning whether he goes, whether he doesn't, because every decision you make on a football pitch you have to try and get right. Sometimes it's taken away by the roar of the crowd and they'll go, and that instinct served us so well at home. Away from home, of course, the support's in the main with the other team, so that's something we're well aware of, and I think tactically it's just about our delivery. It's about our delivery of how we implement our style in every game, and it's very different. Every game, every challenge is different. Every team we play against is different. I think we've seen us be effective, even if we're not pressing. Pressing isn't the be all and end all. Sometimes there's a time when you have to play a different way, but it's just being effective in whatever you do.
We all know Joe Linton's been a huge part of the team. He makes such a big impact, but I think he is just a booking away from a ban. Have you talked to him about how he channels, what he does so well, but the discipline aspect as well?
Yeah, I've had many chats with Joe on different things. Of course, that'll be one part of it. We don't want to miss him. Losing him is always very difficult, and especially so early in the season, it feels like too early to miss a player through suspension. So it's something he has to, of course, control the ones that are in his control. Sometimes with a tackle, and you can be a second late, you can get a booking, you sort of accept that, but it's maybe the other ones that we need to eradicate from our game.
And just finally for me, Sean Dyche spoke highly of you in his press conference. And I guess, how do you find coming up against him and his teams over the years? Do you look forward to it, or do you just think, gosh, this is going to be hard?
I think you look forward to every game because every game's so different. I think with Sean and I think we've naturally sort of had a lot of games against each other. He came in at Burnley when I left, so we've sort of got that... always had that sort of history together, and I think many good battles over the years. He's someone that produces very difficult teams to play against. I've got a huge admiration for that. I don't think you ever get an easy game against a Sean Dyche team. Very organised. They know their roles. They know what their jobs are. They're highly effective, and we've learnt to previous cost against his teams that if you're not effective in your defending or your attacking, it'll be a very difficult game.
Thank you, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dyche. Damien Spellman.
Hi, Eddie. To year to day since the PSG game, does that remain the benchmark or a reminder of where this club wants to be on a sustained basis?
Yeah, I think we'll forever remember that game, and I'm sure a lot of people will remember that game as sort of the benchmark of what we want nights at St James's Park to look like. It's a great performance, goals against a high-class opposition. The atmosphere was on a totally different level. It was an amazing night, and unfortunately for us, it was sort of a big memory, one big highlight, and that's the frustration for us because I think after that game we wanted to continue along the same vein and try and repeat that consistently. It wasn't to be. And now it remains a memory, and we want that memory to, of course, to live a long time, but we want to create new memories, and that's always the challenge when you're in my shoes, is to try and inspire people and try and focus on everyone's energies to get back there.
And as much as you would have wanted European football again this year, has the fact that you haven't, have you felt the benefit of that in terms of the extra training ground time?
Yeah, I think it's still early days in that respect, but yes, I think there was a time last year where we were losing players from injury too regularly, and then the games were looming large for us, and we got to a point where I think we were at breaking point really. We had 11 players to pick from, and we were asking those players to play week in, week out, every 2-3 days. A very difficult period for us, and results ultimately suffered at the end. So I think probably November, December will be the time when maybe we might see the benefit of not being in Europe, but I think that was still our wish and our aim to get there. So we're not sort of looking at it in that way, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Damien. Go to Dom Shaw and then to Jordan.
Hi, Eddie. Having been part of the Champions League, is it frustrating to watch it from afar this year?
Yeah, I think it's a different format, which is interesting, really. I mean, you look at it, and I'm looking at it through the lens if we were there now, and we'd love to be part of it. I mean, it's very interesting the first year of the new format, and you're always thinking with a Newcastle hat on, how would it look for us? How would those games be? I try not to live in that world too long, because then you think, right, we've got a game against Everton on Saturday. So I think you have to understand, in my world, I'm always thinking of the next game. I'll have half an eye on what's going on around Europe, of course I will, but it's not my primary focus.
And just on Callum, is there a desire on his part to show that his best years and days at Newcastle aren't behind him?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if you know Callum personally, you'll know how highly motivated he is. And it was one of the most impressive things when I first met him. Seems like a long time ago, but I saw a really driven individual with really high expectations of himself. And this was when we first came together in the Championship. And since then, his career's gone from strength to strength. But he's not someone to ever settle or to ever, think middle ground. He's got an elite brain, and he wants to be his best every day, and he wants to play, he wants to score goals, that's what he lives for, really. So I think all those motivations are still running through him very strongly.
Thanks, Tom. We've got a Jordan then, Lee Ryder.
Morning, Eddie. Just
Morning.
On midweek, Martin de Bradford came out half time. How was he doing?
Yeah, Martin took a nasty whack to his knee. I think he had a scan. The scan showed, I think, it was just bruising, hopefully. So whether he's fit for this game or not, I'm not sure. But it won't be a serious injury.
And just on Joe Linton and the yellow cards, can he challenge that aggression? Does he need to challenge that aggression, or do you almost just accept that's part of his game and he has to almost play on the edge? Yeah,
I think you have to accept it to a degree, because you can't have a destroyer, ball winner, brilliant at second balls, duels, tackler, that force that he is in the middle of the pitch, and not accept sometimes he's going to miss time tackles and sometimes he's going to pick up yellow cards. You can't have it both ways. Of course, we don't want to lose him to suspension. We will try and help him with it, but as I say, you can't have both.
And then just finally going back to that PSG game, is that the benchmark for the way you want your team to play? Is that still the benchmark?
It's funny because obviously I watched it live. I analysed the game, but I haven't seen it since. Once you sort of analyse the game properly, you put it to bed. So I've got no idea how that looks in now. Like watching the game now, I might look at it through different eyes. At the time, it felt like a great performance, but yeah, I'm sure. I mean, obviously I've seen the goals again, but because they get replayed, but I haven't sort of gone back through the game.
Thanks, Jordan. Lee?
Hi, Eddie. Last season, Jordan Pickford at the end of the game seemed to revel in that victory, and he always seems to try to set a certain temperature at Goodison Park. Is that something that can motivate the players a little bit on this occasion?
I don't think we need any extra motivation, in a sense that we know last year that was a painful defeat at a time when we were in the midst of the season that we were going to have. That was a difficult night for us. I think we felt the pain of the defeat. So no, we know that it's just focusing on our performance in the game. We don't worry about individuals. It's about making sure we're at our very best tomorrow.
And we think it's going to be the last visit to Goodison Park. How will you feel going there potentially for one last time in front of a full house?
I think I feel fine. Looking forward to the game. It's not the big deal for me. It will be for Everton, of course, and I understand that. But for me, it's just trying to get the 3 points is the only important thing.
We watched last night Tottenham play a lot of their young players. I guess you would want to play more young players at Newcastle. You've had a few success stories with Lewis Miley. Is that something, a challenge to the academy to provide you with more options moving forward?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it that way. I think we're working in tandem with the academy. I think Steve Harper, I've got a really good relationship with. I've been down to the academy a couple of times in recent weeks to spend some time with the staff. I think it's in great hands. I think there's some really passionate people, some great coaches down there, and I think the work is taking place to try and produce future superstars for Newcastle, and I think everyone wants the same thing, and it has done. You look at the players that have come through in recent years. When you look at Elliott and Louis Miley, there's been some outstanding individuals. Those players they're elite players, so I think it's done really, really well. Of course, the challenge is to produce more. Always, people want more. I want more. But the work's going on, and as I say, as long as we have the right people in the right positions, the players will come through. I've got no doubt about that.
Thanks, Lee. Got a Chris Waff and then Luke Edwards. Chris?
Morning, Eddie. Next week is going to be the 3-year anniversary since the takeover, and I know you've not been here for the entire time, but you have been for most of it. During that time, what progress do you think has really been made on and off the field? How would you view those 3 years?
Yeah, it's somewhat difficult to me to judge before, because obviously before the takeover, I mean. So I think you guys will have a better maybe judgment of that. I can only talk about since I've been here, and the support we've had internally has been brilliant from everyone at PIF to the owners. And I think there's been a big change. When you look at just the environment, the room we're sat in now, that doesn't happen by chance. That happens because of investment, and the investment here at the training ground's been there for everyone to see. And of course there's a lot of work going on with stadiums and discussions about taking the club into sort of a next phase of that takeover. I think the next phase of investment, which will be the long-term growth of the club, and that's really the key decisions, and I know that's why everyone's taken the time to try and make sure those decisions are right. But I think it's a really exciting time to be associated with Newcastle. I think there's a lot going to happen in the future. The dreaded words of PSR, and that would just put a lid on what can be done now. But I think the future looks very bright beyond that period.
And I mean, the team themselves has obviously made giant strides in terms of where they are in the table, but you've used the word elite quite a few times in this press conference. How far do you think you are from being one of those sort of established elite footballing sides?
Yeah, I think we've got work to do. We're not there yet. I think we're well aware of where we currently stand. You know, when you look at revenue and wage bills and all the things that are sort of really key markers of long-term and consistent success, we're not there. So we can't sort of put that pressure on the players that we have now. That'll be unfair on them to sort of restrict them in that way. I want them to play with freedom and enjoy their football, and to try and take the pressure off them. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't push them hard for winning and for the maximum of their capabilities, which we will do. But I think we have to recognise where we currently are, and we're striving to get there. We're not certainly not there yet.
Thanks, Chris. Luke?
Callum's ability's never been in question. The problem is he's barely kicked the ball for you this year. Are you confident that he can stand up to the rigours of Premier League football at the age he's at?
Yes, I am. I mean, I believe in our medical team, and I believe in our sports science team, and I believe in how we work. So I think we can, with the best will in the world, you can never predict, but I think we can get him fit, keep him fit, and he can be effective in the Premier League for us, hopefully for some period of time to come. But there's no guarantee on that. You can't make promises that you're not in control of. But I see no reason why we can't. I think he has everything that he needs here. I know there's the same desire from the player. So when you have that process of work and the desire from the player, I'd like to think we can align together and he can continue to score goals for us.
I'm a little bit under the weather today, so I might be a bit grumpy with these questions. But you had a bit of a shocker.
I sound like you.
No, I'm normally very sunshine. You had a bit of a shocker at Everton last year, and it was kind of indicative of...
That's one way of putting it, thanks.
Yeah. Weren't you ill?
Pardon?
You were ill, weren't you? Didn't you have COVID?
Yes. Did I have COVID? Was that the year before? I'm not sure. Okay. It all goes into
We've gone off
sort of a blur. But yeah, I don't think I was very well.
No, okay. It was a problem with the away form last season, and that was... I'm getting there roundabout way. Is the away form still a concern to you? Is it a concern to you that some players play a lot better at home than they play away?
What was the link to me being ill? Okay.
Just because I'm not well today.
I was just trying to understand it. Yeah, I think you could...
Do you want me to ask it again?
No, please don't. I think you could make that... I don't know whether it's an accusation or an opinion. Like we have to accept what we deliver, and I think you could quite fairly throw that at me. It's up to the players to respond to that. I think certainly from my side, there's no difference really with how we prepare the game, with how we try and get the team to play. So for me, my side is about giving the players the environment to play well the opportunity to play well. I'd like to think that's there. And then it's down to the players to deliver the performance that we know they're capable of. I think if you go back, rewind, historically, I think our away form was very good in our Champions League season. We were pretty consistent. I think 1 or 2 off games, but I think that will happen through the season. Last year, this sort of came to the fore, and then this year, who knows what will happen? I think we've won 1, drawn 1, lost 1. So we're very much in our hands to take it in a different direction and change the narrative. And that's what we've got to try and do.
Just finally, we had progress on Anthony Gordon's contract. What's the situation with Alexander Isak and Sean Longstaff as well, please?
I don't know, to be very frank with you. I don't know.
Thanks, Luke. Go to Dominic, Skirt, and then Craig.
Just to follow up Luke's question, just Anthony Gordon, is he one of those individuals who seems to thrive playing at St James's Park but maybe is less effective away from home?
Yeah, I don't think it's for me to talk individually. I'll do that with the players themselves. I think the challenge is for us all to be the same, St James's Park and away from home. It's not about individuals, and it's about allowing, sometimes one part of the team can affect the individual, so it's about making sure as a team we're absolutely on it this weekend.
And he's a player who seems to thrive on the emotion of the atmosphere. St James's Park did it against Man City. The situation with Everton, last visit to Goodison Park, do you think that could almost help him and galvanise him this weekend?
Yeah, difficult to predict. I think, as I said earlier, he's a human being, so he will be emotional going into the game. All the players are emotional going into the game because they're representing the football club and they're in a heightened state of emotion at that moment when you're playing. I just want to see Anthony play his game.
Thanks, Tom. Craig Hall.
Morning, Eddie. This is an extension of what we spoke about before with regards to the away form, and this is a compliment. At your best, when you followed you guys away from home, you didn't look like an away team, you just looked like Newcastle. You went out and played your game. This season and the parts of last, you've looked like an away team. Would you agree with that, and what does that come back to?
I wouldn't totally disagree with it. Whether I agree with it, I'd need time to process it.
Okay, Luke.
You've given me a little bit more thinking time. I just think we want to be the same team home and away. We don't. No part of us wants to send a team out, and you're sort of recognising we are playing away from home. So we want to see the same energy, the same determination to take the game by the scruff of the neck and dictate play. I think if you look at the top teams historically in the Premier League, that's what they've done. You look at the Manchester Cities in recent years; they're always the best team to look at. For me, they don't change, and that's a compliment. That they grab the game, they're in control of the game, and you wouldn't know whether they're playing home or away. Now that's a target for us to try and hit, and for whatever reason, we've been inconsistent. It doesn't mean it's all bad. There's been some really good in there, but we need to find that consistency.
And will tomorrow be more informative of where your team is at? Because there was a lot of plaudits, and rightly so, after the game last Saturday against Manchester City, but that's Manchester City at home. Will tomorrow tell you more and everyone more about whether your team is back, whether that, those qualities, that identity is there to stay?
Yeah, I think I get your point. Manchester City in itself takes care of itself. The players will be elevated because of the opponent, but you still have to perform in the manner that we did, and that's not a given. So I give the players credit for last week, but this is another test where we have to respond in the right way.
Thanks, Craig. Go to Gary and then to Kieran.
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
Just going back to the anniversary, you spoke about PSG and some of the other highs there. What's been the best moment since the takeover and since you took over?
For me, the best. Well, they've been the best moment for me from the takeover was getting sort of appointed in the job. I think that was a great moment for me personally. I think if it's associated to a game, the game against Leicester always sticks in my head. That Bruno's header, because at that stage we were. I mean, I'm going back a while, but we were very much in relegation trouble, and that just felt like the moment we felt we were staying up. And it was at home, and it was the last seconds of the game. There's no better feeling than winning a game in those last few moments. It just felt like a sort of a turning point for us. So that game always sticks in my head.
And just last one from me, obviously, to another international break coming up. Is it frustrating for you that most of these squads going to be going off again, or are you kind of happy that it's 2-week break after the game, get a couple more players back?
No, I think I'd prefer to keep the players here. I just feel we're beginning to get us in a better place physically, collectively. Everyone on the same page. Everyone near enough 100% fit to win the players that are fit here. And then they go again, and you lose contact with them for 2 weeks, which then, in some senses, if they don't play, brings you back a couple of steps. But the bonus is, as you say, hopefully we get not just Callum and Alex fit, but Louis Miley as well, who's been a big miss from our squad. So to get those 3 players back in the next 2 weeks will be huge for us.
Thanks, Gary. Kieran Kelly.
Morning. You spoke how it would feel maybe a betrayal to leave St James's, but obviously mentioned the revenue aspect. Do you sense how delicate a decision this is for the people above you? Absolutely.
I think it's a massive decision, because it will affect the next how many years at the football club. And I think it was a decision that you won't be able to please everybody. There'll be different opinions. But it's truly only the people that are sort of assessing all the pros and cons can really make the decision. It's very easy to give an opinion on the outside, but until you know all the facts, it's very difficult. So you've got a huge thing on the cost and against the revenue or the extra revenue you could get. So it's a huge decision to make.
And you've obviously managed all over the country. What makes it so unique as an arena?
I've always said the positioning, for one. The positioning where it is in the city is totally unique, and I'd hate to see the stadium move from its current position, because it dominates the eye line of the whole city, and you can see it from miles around. And I think that's really inspiring when wherever you are in Newcastle, you get a glimpse. And personally, I always think to the next game and when we're going to be there. And then I think when you're in it, I just think it's I don't know how it creates it, but just the atmosphere, the look of the stadium, I just think it's a beautiful thing. And I love being there. I love experiencing games there, and obviously I love winning there. That's the best feeling.
Thanks, Kieran. Simon Bird.
Hi, Eddie. The club has moved forward a lot in the last 3 years since the takeover, but there was a lot of promises of winning things within five years, winning everything within 5 to 10 years. Were they unrealistic, and was the early optimism a little bit overblown, and there wasn't a recognition of how hard it is to win stuff in football?
5 years does seem short, doesn't it? Especially you're in my shoes. I think at the time, I don't think the statements were rash. I think there was a feeling that the club at that stage could really invest what it wanted, and there's no guarantee even with that investment you're going to win things. We all know that. I think we've been in the game long enough, but it gives you a much better chance. But since then, I think there's been a real tightening of the rules, and I think that's been unfair to judge them by those comments with the changing of the rules, because you only judge the comments by the time they were made. And I think now it's become, I wouldn't say impossible, but it's become very, very difficult to achieve, I think, what they initially thought they could achieve through no fault of their own.
The other one is on the stadium redevelopment. Is this the biggest test of long-term ambition for the club in terms of what the club's going to do with St James's Park, whether it relocates or redevelops? And specifically, it's a difficult question for you, but how big do you think St James's Park needs to be? I mean, 65,000 as mentioned, 80,000, if you could conjure a figure.
Cool. I think conjuring a figure is difficult, but I think what you'd say is the demand is there. So I think you could almost have whatever size stadium you want to a degree, and it would be full. Which I think whenever you build a stadium, you don't want to see empty seats. You want to see the stadium full of people. And I think when you go back to the game on Tuesday against AFC Wimbledon, you see a sold-out venue. You can see the appetite here, not just here, but from Newcastle fans all over the world to come and watch the team play, which is a magnificent starting point, really. I think it's just such a difficult decision to say, well, this is the blueprint of the ambition, because I don't think that sort of simplifies the decision. I'm not party to those talks. I haven't been party to those talks at all, but can only imagine sort of the detail they're going through to try and make sure they make the right decision for the long-term benefit of the club.
Thanks, Martin. Anything?
Sorry, just to go along with that, how unique is the stadium for you and for the players?
Yeah, I think it is. I always said when I was an opposing manager coming to St James's Park the first time I managed there, I was like, wow, I've never managed in a stadium quite like that. Now, I think it did help that we won the game, because you always have positive memories on a win. But and I'm not lying here, this is me and my staff talking, and we'd been to every ground in the Premier League, I think near enough by that point, and St James's Park was one of the last I think we'd been to, and it blew us away. It's not necessarily the biggest, there's just something about the look of the stadium and the feel of it. I think when you're there, it's just a great place to play football.
So if the club was to move, they would lose something special?
Yeah, possibly, but then I think you have to look at what you can gain. You can't just look at what you're going to lose. What you could gain could also be equally as special. And the club has to move forward. It can't be stuck in the past or be romantic to a degree. There's finances to think of, and that will affect the long-term success of the club. So that's why it's not a clear-cut decision.